Last night, towards the end of the first service, as we got to the silent prayer, I remember saying, "Oh God, let Aaron Judge hit a home run now." When I got out, people said to me, "Did you know that Judge hit a home run?" And when I got home, I heard the announcers say, we have it on good faith that Rabbi Miller called for Aaron Judge. I want to begin with words of gratitude to my dear colleague and friend, Rabbi Philip Baisley, who leads our congregation with kindness and caring and the gifts of his heart and mind. To Ina Horn, our temple's president, no president knows what her or his tenure will be like. You, Ina, have led us with a loving hand during a time in our history unlike any other. My thanks to Cantor Stanton and our wonderful and dedicated temple's No Ringer Choir, along with my precious bar mitzvah student, the incomparable David Schlossberg. No keys have ever played like they do when you put your fingers to them. You all inspire us and lead us in the music that touches our hearts year after year since the day I arrived here nearly 50 years ago. And my heartfelt thanks to all of you, our beloved congregation. So many of you reached out to me following my surgery and rehabilitation, and so many more shared their condolences and expressions of comfort and kindness to me following my mother's death. When I went to rehab, I was placed in the same facility as my mother. She was literally down the hall from me. And so for a month, twice a day, I wheeled down to her room, often together with my cousin, and my brother would FaceTime with us from Australia, and we would sing. My mother had been a professional singer, but in her later years, she had become like Tony Bennett. And I was her Lady Gaga. I would wheel down the hall. She would see me. She knew I was someone in her life, but she didn't remember my name anymore. She would see me, and I would sing out to her, "Hey, good looking." And she would sing back, "What you got cooking? How about cooking something up with me?" The 5th week, she stopped singing. And I just sang to her. And then she died on Erev Shavuot. It is said that King David died on Erev Shavuot, and I am convinced that David was waiting for her playing his harp, and the two of them have been singing together ever since. That month was a gift to both of us, an incredible gift. For the past 5 months, I have felt your embrace, which has had a significant impact upon my healing and has comforted me through my days of mourning. Over the course of my lifetime, I have served the role of comforter. But until this summer, I had never personally experienced the profound comforting presence of sacred community. I am deeply, deeply touched. Now, 2 days after my surgery to replace my hip for the 3rd time, Near midnight, I found myself awake and looked up at the clock on the wall in my hospital room. I noticed that the moment that the clock had on it was 10 minutes to midnight. And it didn't move. I said to myself, Bennett, I think for you time has come to a standstill. I wasn't sure what to make of that moment, but I thought of it as a kind of Yom Kippur experience. Reflect on the meaning of your life while time has been suspended. Your life may well have hung in the balance, but the gift of life has now been restored. You are alive, and no greater gift can be given to you. Make the most of it. For the next few days, nurses and doctors and aides went in and out of my room. No one noticed the stopped clock, and when I would point it out to some of them, they just shrugged their shoulders and went about their business. I guess it wasn't in their job description to fix it. The clock remained at 10 minutes to midnight. On the morning of day 5, a nurse came and told me that soon I would be transferred to rehab and they would be coming for me shortly, so I should get ready. A few minutes later, a young aide came bounding into my room. He suddenly stopped, looked at the clock, said, "How do you like that?" And then he took the clock off the wall, returned after a few minutes, and placed the clock in its place. The time was correct. The second hand was moving. He never said a word to me. He just left. And I said to myself, Bennett, I guess for you, time has begun again. And soon afterward, I left the hospital. You and I are gathered here and via live stream on this Yom Kippur morning at our most intense period of introspection and reflection. For us, time has come to a halt. The world around us remains in crisis. Cars are busy going up and down Livingston Avenue. Business continues to function. But here, in this beautiful sanctuary, you and I sit and contemplate the meaning of life. We consider our actions of the past year and search for forgiveness for our shortcomings. And yes, each of us reflects on the meaning of the precious gift of life. We learn from the rabbis of our tradition that teshuvah, true reflection, and forgiveness does not occur in a flash, or in an hour, or even in a day. That is why the rabbis have guided us by calling upon us to recite one specific psalm each day for 50 days, starting with the first day of the month of Elul and ending on Simchat Torah. That psalm, that beautiful biblical poem, Psalm 27, is one that I have been reading every day now since the beginning of Elul. I have read it together every morning between 8 and 8:45 in the morning, Eastern Time, with a group of virtual friends who range from Omaha to Chicago to Michigan to Boston to Great Neck to New Jersey. All of us join together in a minyan, and we share in reflecting on the meaning of life, loss, healing, the power of prayer, and recognizing that life is a precious gift to behold every single day. And we end with singing Psalm 27. Permit me to share part of that psalm with you. You can find it, by the way, on page 140. And I invite you to turn to it now so you can see the words. Not yet, David. Wait until after I do the first thing. The traditional chanting is a simple but beautiful and even haunting melody. Many have written newer melodies for Psalm 27, giving it meaning in so many ways. But here's the traditional melody. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakim. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Shivti b'veit Adonai, kol yemei chayai, lachazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo, lachazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo. Try it with me. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Shivti b'veit Adonai, kol yemei chayai, lachazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo, lachazot b'noam Adonai, uvaker b'heichalo. One thing I have sought from Adonai, oh, how I long for it, that I may live in the house of the divine all the days of my life, that I may look upon the sweetness of Adonai and gaze in delight at God's temple. The psalmist is asking, if I only had one question to ask of God, what would it be? How could I live in a world worthy of God's presence? At a time when we have experienced the ravages of COVID, when we have seen the powerful and destructive forces of climate change that have produced terrifying hurricanes and ferocious forest fires, when our leaders have focused on maintaining power at all costs rather than working together for the common good, this season of repentance and this day of Yom Kippur calls on us to consider that the earth is a divine creation and how fortunate we are to live in such a world. The psalmist dreams of being able to see the sweetness of Adonai, that we are the hands of God on this place we call earth, and that our hands are to be instruments of goodness, kindness, and justice. Not empty words, but true acts of gemilut chasadim. Such a divine calling is ours, to labor on behalf of a loving God and to touch others with the sacredness of the divine spirit. And the psalmist suggests that the place from which such kindness shall emanate is from our temple. All temples, all houses of worship, where God might come by on any given day, peek inside and say, this is a place worthy of my presence. In here the people have created a mikdash ma'at, a small sanctuary to serve as model to the rest of the world. Oh, how wonderful it would be if all around they would say of us, of our congregation, Anshe Emet, that it is a community unlike any other. The kindness that emanates from its congregants, the commitment to a world of justice and integrity for all. May we live up to our name, Anshe Emet, a people of truth, of dignity, and of integrity in everything that we do. Listen to the words of the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He says it far better than me. The question is, to what extent will we see our present interconnectedness as the work of human beings or as a call call from God to a greater humanity, as well as to a greater self-restraint. As for me, I believe that we are being summoned by God to see in the human other a trace of the divine other. The test, so lamentably failed by the great powers, is to see the divine presence in the face of a stranger, to heed the cry of those who are disempowered in this age of unprecedented powers, who are hungry and poor and ignorant and uneducated, whose human potential is being denied the chance to be expressed. That is the faith of our ancestors, of Abraham and Sarah. We are not gods, but we are summoned by God to do God's work of love and justice and compassion and peace. And Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the greats of our people, who spoke truth to power, said it so poetically. He taught, life without integrity is like loosely hanging threads, each fraying from the main cloth. While in acts of piety, we learn to understand that every instant is like a thread raveling out of eternity to form a delicate tassel. We must not cast off the threads, but weave them into the design of an eternal fabric. Each day points to eternity. The fate of all time depends upon a single moment. In this past year, so many have experienced single moments of life and living. For some, they have been moments of struggle. Death of a loved one, facing a debilitating disease, the ravages of a hurricane. Add to such experiences what we witness each day through our media, political ads, and division in our country and throughout the world, it would be far too easy to simply fall into despair. But as philosopher Hermann Hesse reminds us, God does not send us despair in order to kill us. God sends despair in order to awaken us to a new life. Yes, there are also incredible moments of joy. The birth of a baby, a wedding couple standing under the chuppah, a milestone moment. It is those moments that sustain us. I call them Shehechianu moments. And they should be celebrated with blessing, with song, and with rejoicing. Permit me now to share with you a single moment, a precious moment in time. Among my readings this summer, I came upon a memoir entitled, Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, by Sanford Greenberg grew up in Buffalo, New York, the child of Holocaust survivors, and he graduated from Bennett High School in Buffalo. I have friends who went to Bennett High School. We often would joke about it. What it would be like if I went to Bennett High School. He went on to Columbia University on full scholarship, and while there, he met a fellow classmate by the name of Arthur Garfunkel from Forest Hills, Queens. Yep, that Arthur Garfunkel. They became best friends and roommates. And one day in November of their junior year, Greenberg came back from class and complained to Garfunkel of having difficulty seeing. Turns out he was going blind. In despair, he returned to Buffalo believing that his college career and life were permanently to be altered. Being a true friend, Garfunkel followed him to Buffalo and insisted that Greenberg return to school. Well, I think you have to come back, Arthur said. It just seems like the only reasonable thing to do. What are you talking about? You're crazy. I don't want to discuss it. Well, you're going to have to discuss it at some point. I'm going to make you discuss it. Well, I don't want to. Sanford, stop. He repeated that he would help me if I returned. Just how are you going to help me? Well, I could get all your class notes, all your assignments. I could quiz you for your exams. I could walk you through your class and then pick you up. Well, how are you going to do that and still handle your own classes and reading? We can figure something out. I think you're dodging the main question, though. And what is that? Well, the main question is whether or not you will return. Arthur then laid out his underlying premise. Everything else would fall into line once I made that decision. His tone of voice suddenly changed. He began to sing. Oh, Sanford, 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 I made you out of clay, and now you're dry and ready. So Sanford, we must play. And with that, his intensity vanished. We both laughed and put our arms on each other's shoulders. Well, Greenberg went back to school, and Garfunkel was true to his word. He was with him to every class, for every assignment, for being his friend. But Greenberg remained in despair. And so one day in downtown New York City, something happened. Garfunkel said to his friend, Sanford, you stay here. I have something I have to do. Greenberg waited a while, but Garfunkel, it seemed, didn't return. And not knowing what else to do, Greenberg worked his way back to Columbia. He fell, he bumped into people and into walls. He got cut, he bled, but incredibly he managed to take 2 subways and get off at the stop for Columbia. I felt my way to the iron gates and went through onto College Walk. As I began to make my way, I was stopped by a young man I recognized by smell as Arthur. Oops, excuse me, sir, he said, a slight sardonic emphasis on the last word. We were silent for a moment as we stood near the university gate. I wanted to kill him. And then, in his normal voice, he said abruptly, I knew you could do it, but I wanted to be sure you knew you could do it. He had been shadowing me all along. I grabbed his hands, exultantly raised them, and swung him around me. In sweeping circular motions, we waltzed out onto College Walk. That moment at the gates of the university, the moment of my triumphant survival of that subway odyssey, was the moment when fear of risk, fear of movement, fear of change, was vanquished within me forever. I can say only that I realized something profound. My friends and my family had become angels who would be with me and never leave. I was strong because of the strength we gave each other. Well, Greenberg graduated from Columbia. He went on to Harvard and got a law degree and a PhD, and then to Oxford. He served as a White House fellow in the Johnson administration, and so much more. My dear friends, with whom I have walked all these years, there is no greater nor more important message I can share with you today. We are strong because of the strength we give to each other. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota avakesh. Yes, if I could ask only one thing of God, what would it be? My colleague, Rabbi Deborah Robbins, states it in the following way. She writes, it's nearly impossible to decide. My prayer bends toward gratitude not supplication. Thank you, strength, for the steps I take as I walk. Thank you, wisdom, for the opportunity to study Torah. Thank you, generosity for abundance in my life. Thank you, protection for keeping us alive and allowing us to reach this moment. Endless gratitude every new day of every new year. If I could ask God for only one thing, what would it be? I have no requests, only questions. Maybe, who can, when will, what if, where was, why did? No, now I know my question. If I could ask God something, not for something, the one thing I would ask is, how can I help? On this Yom Kippur morning, as we contemplate so many thoughts and questions about life and living, let us ask the most important question of all: how can I help? How can I help make this community, this place I love, this precious country, our beloved Israel, this world in which I live? How may I behold each day so that I may live in the house of the divine all the days of my life? Kenya Hiratzel.